Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Audit and Finance Standing Committee for November 16th, 2022. It is 10 a.m. and I'd like to call the meeting to order. My name is Paul Russell and I represent Lower Sackville. I'd also like to acknowledge that the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. And I'd like to start off this morning by welcoming two new members to the committee, Deputy Mayor Pam Lovelace and Councillor Iona Stoddard. Good morning and welcome to the committee. And I'd like to thank Councillor Trish Purdy and Councillor Catherine Morse for their time on the committee. And at this point, I'd like to step down from the chair. The next item on the agenda is the annual election of chair and vice chair. And so I'm going to hand it over to our clerk to run the election of chair and vice chair. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'll just let everybody take their seats and then we can start with the election of chair and vice chair, as this happens on an annual basis for this committee. And I will start by opening the floor for nominations for the position of chair. Do I have any nominations from the floor for the position of chair?
I would nominate Paul Russell for chair.
It was moved by Councillor Daigle-Gammon and seconded by Deputy Mayor. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I will ask for any further nominations for the position of chair. Are there any further nominations for the position of chair? And a final time, any nominations? Wonderful. Hearing none, I will call for a motion to cease nominations. Thank you. Alrighty. So we have one candidate for the position of chair, and if there are no questions, comments, no, then I will call for the question. All those in favor for Councillor Russell as the chair of the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, please say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Wonderful. Hearing none, our chair is Councillor Paul Russell.
Thank you very much, everybody. The next election is for the annual election of the vice chair. And I'd like to open the floor for nominations for vice chair. Deputy Mayor. Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to nominate Kathy Daigle-Gammon for vice chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Stoddard. Are there any further nominations for vice chair? Are there any further nominations for vice chair? And third and final time, are there any further nominations for vice chair? Not seeing any. Can I have a motion to close the nominations, please? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Stoddard. All in favor? Aye. All opposed, say nay. Thank you. So we have the one nomination for vice chair of the committee. All in favor of Councillor Daigle-Gammon as the vice chair of the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of October 19th, 2022. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes, please? Councillor Daigle-Gammon, thank you. A seconder, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. All in favor of the minutes of October 19th, 2022, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you very much. The approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Annie, do we have any additions or deletions today?
Thank you, Chair. There is one proposed added item for today, item 15.1, Standing Committee Appointments to Boards and Committees.
Thank you. So with that, it being a new added item, we need approval from effectively everybody who is in the room, because we have two committee members who aren't here, and we need 2/3 approval. So are there any other changes from the committee for the agenda today? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move item 17, public participation, up to the top, please, of the agenda. So just after, I guess, item 12.1, maybe? Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay. I'm sorry? Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Stoddard, for seconding that. All in favor of the agenda as amended with that additional item and with that move, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you. We have an agenda. The next items are the business arising out of the minutes. Not seeing any. Call for declaration of conflicts of interest. I don't see any. Motions of reconsideration and motions of rescission and consideration of deferred business and notices of tabled matters are all none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Annie, do we have any correspondence for this meeting?
Thank you, Chair. There's no official correspondence for this meeting. However, members will have a handout for public participation that will be circulated digitally after.
Okay, thank you very much. And do we have any petitions for this meeting? Not seeing any. That's great. Thank you. And we don't have any presentations listed. We don't have any information items brought forward. There is no report from the Auditor General. So we are moving ahead with the public presentation, or public participation. As of 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, November 15th, there were no registered speakers, but I believe there is one at this point. If meeting attendees register for public participation, Annie has just picked up the sign-up sheet. And there is one person on it. So at this point, proceeding with the public participation, please keep your comments respectful, on topic, and directed to the chair. The clerk will announce when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is complete for all speakers. Any member of the public who has registered with the clerk's office on this matter will be given 5 minutes to address the topic. When I call your name, you may come up to the microphone. After everyone on the list has been given an opportunity to speak, I will call 3 times to ask if there are any additional speakers. The speaker that is on the list is Colin May. So, good morning, Colin. Are we able to... Colin, would you mind moving one mic to your right, please? Yes, please. Oh, Annie's pointing to the middle one. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does everybody have this one sheet that I sent? when the budget was first tabled, I very much doubted the budget for vehicle fuel, simply because it's a market that I've followed for most of my adult life, being involved in it. So I put together this one sheet. In fact, when you go back to the budget, it was only a 5.6% increase projected in the budget for the cost of fuel. So I put together this one sheet that walks everybody through what took place. So as of yesterday, the price of diesel, the wholesale price before any taxes at the UARB was 201.94 cents, which is more than double from a year ago. I struggled to understand why the original budget never took account of the changing price in crude oil, and that is why I have the table there that shows you the date of the budget committee meetings and the UARB wholesale diesel price on that day. As far as I'm concerned, it's easy to understand. It's laid out. And that's why I go through, even in the fall of 21, Putin was threatening Ukraine then, and I think most reasonable people at the time would have thought that that was not an idle threat. So then before the Olympics, you get President Xi tells Putin not to invade Ukraine until after the Olympics are over. So of course, he does as he's told. And you can see how that price changes. And yet, I struggled to understand how, when the council finally approved the budget, the price of wholesale diesel was 145 cents, which was up from 96 when the first budget meeting of council took place. And I thought to myself, so why? When I was on Dartmouth Council in the years before I was on it, I used to call them fudgets, because that's what they used to do. They'd fudge it every year. And they knew what they were doing, and when I got up my hind legs objected to this, I was quietly told, Colin, why don't you just go along to get along? Anyway, I think I hope this year we see a more realistic estimate of the price of fuel. And before the meeting started, I spoke to Jerry there. And there's other municipalities in Canada that have the right to hedge their fuel costs. Airlines hedge the fuel costs. Railways hedge the fuel costs. And I thought, and I've said to Jerry, is perhaps the province could join together with the school boards and all the municipalities and explore the use of hedging. I understand the risks associated with it, but I think, all the large fuel consumers hedge, and I'm quite sure that the company that provides the HRM, the fuel, I'm quite sure they use hedging. But I think, first of all, you need the budgets and the documents provided by staff to realize what is actually taking place in the market and adjust the budgets through the process. Sure. Because, as I said, on November 23, when your first meeting was $96, and when you set the budget, it was $145, and yesterday it was $202. There may be reasons why. I'm not going to go into that because it would be speculation.
30
Thank you
seconds
very much.
remaining.
Thank you very much, Colin. I'm going to ask Jerry Blackwood, our CFO, to respond to that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Jerry Blackwood, CFO. Thank you, Mr. May, for your comments, as always. Fuel, obviously one of our biggest costs, especially with respect to transit and our municipal fleet and our emergency fleet. Something we track for sure. To your point about budget last year, I think, I understand your comments. We did not build that into the budget at that time because we were far along into the budget process, and council had already given us a direction with respect to building a budget around a particular tax increase. With the discussion that we had at council and came forward after when we concluded our year end was that we did set money aside out of the corporate surplus last year, which was $8 million, that would hedge off some of our exposure on fuel. There was several discussions about that during budget committees last winter and into the spring around that. So we did do that. On the subject of hedging, so I don't think we really have the authority. I know we talked about that a little bit with the province, and I think, you know, from what we heard back from Treasury Board is that that has a high risk profile to it to go into those markets, especially when they're volatile. It's not something that we usually engage on. More typically would be on procurements and things like that. If we were doing a procurement in a foreign currency or something like that, we would hedge some risks there, but not on fuel. But something certainly we keep our eye on. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Thank you, Mr. May. Are there any further speakers for public participation? Are there any further speakers for the public participation? Third and final time, would anybody from the gallery like to come forward for public participation? Not seeing anybody step forward. Thank you very much to all of the, to Mr. May for coming to speak with us about this. This is certainly a significant item. And I appreciate what you have shared with us. I'd like to move ahead now with the marketing levy, item 12.2.1, the marketing levy special events. Can I have Councillor Daigle-Gammon? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd put the following motion forward. I move that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee recommend that Regional Council 1 adopt the amendments to Administrative Order 2014-020-GOV respecting marketing levy special event reserve grants as set out in Attachment B, and 2, adopt the amendments to Administrative Order 2014-021-GOV respecting regional special events grants as set out in Attachment D.
Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Thank you, Councillor Stoddard, for seconding that. Do you have anything on that?
Just a few comments. Thank you very much. This report was the result of conversations that we had last year during budget, mostly as a result of COVID, looking at what happens when we have multi-year funding arrangements with groups, that there might be some catastrophic or not catastrophic, but there could be some event that's going to make a pause for a year. And so instead of having to come back, this would allow them to have this, use the interrupter clause so that they maintain their funding. The nice thing about the staff report I find in this is that it does look at a case-by-case basis, which I think is very respectful of the groups that are planning this. So hope we support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. I don't see any further speakers on the list. We do have Elizabeth Taylor in the room to answer any questions on this, but there is no presentation. So all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you. That motion passes. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. The next item on the agenda is the second quarter 2022-23 financial report, and we have Dave Hurley with us with a presentation. Go ahead, Dave, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Dave Harley, Director of Accounting and Financial Reporting, and I'm here to take you through the second quarter update of our financial report. Can we get the presentation up? There we go. Yeah. So we'll begin with looking at our general rate surplus. And this year, actually, at this point, at the end of the second quarter, we're projecting a deficit of $7.4 million. Largely, this is due to increased fuel costs, which are about $10.7 million due to the increasing prices. We've seen a decrease in our permit revenues of about $5.8 million, as we've seen lower than planned volume of permits being issued. We are seeing increases in some of our winter maintenance and collections contracts, largely also, again, related to fuel increases that are built into those contracts. There's been decreases in parking revenue, largely due to changes in parking and as well as some staffing shortages. We had additional hurricane costs for Hurricane Fiona, some cleanup costs. Currently, we're tracking those at about $750,000, but we're still working on compiling what the total cleanup of that is going to be. We've had an increase in our RCMP service contract of $640,000, and we're also seeing some decreases in other permit revenues around encroachment and development for $350,000. We've seen increased building repairs and maintenance costs, again, partially driven by rising fuel and other material costs. So that's about an $830,000 increase. And we had a lower HST offset from the province by about $400,000. And finally, we have an additional $1.2 million in emergency housing funds. These funds were actually carried forward from the previous year, though, so that's part of the, if you look below, we have our offset. So that $11.4 million transfer from the previous year, that included that $1.2 million. It also included $8 million that we had identified during budget last year to carry forward for fuel increases this year, and some other items we identified at year end. And the one positive news we have coming through this year is investment income is up about $4.7 million due to the higher interest rates that we're seeing in the market. As always, we continue to monitor risks and opportunities, and these are largely unchanged this year. The biggest impacts, obviously, are inflationary increases and stock shortages and how they impact both our operational and our capital budgets. Commodity costs, again, that's the fuel and the diesel, and salt as we get into the winter season. Staffing levels continue to have an impact on our ability to offer services and complete capital projects. We're getting into the winter season, so there's the potential for winter-related weather impacts, and then in general, just the impacts we have from housing and our attempts to work with that. So move on to the councillors' funds. In terms of the district capital funds, there's a $3.1 million budget for the year. As of the second quarter, $1.8 million has been spent or committed. We have an additional $1.3 million available. And of the district activity funds for the total $72,000 budget, as of the second quarter, $38,600 has been spent or committed, and we have another $33,400 available for councillors to spend. And you can see the details in attachments 3 and 4 with the breakdown by councillor. In terms of recreational area rates, there's 21 of these area rates that are in effect at the moment. There's a surplus in these accounts. It was $1.2 million as of April 1st. We've received another $475,000 in revenues. Expenses have been $502,000, so that leaves us with a surplus of $1.1 million as of September 30th. And attachment 5 would give you the details of each of the different area rates. For our reserves, we have a balance of $462 million currently within the reserves. Against this, we have current commitments for the current year of $232 million. We have pending contributions of $54 million, So we're projecting to close the year at about $285 million reserve balance. We've brought that out for the next 4 years and also listed what we have for future commitments, particularly those related to the strategic initiatives. So that leaves us with a projected uncommitted balance of about $18 million by the end of the 25-26 fiscal year. Looking at our accounts receivable, you can see we have a total gross accounts receivable of $411 million. The vast majority of this is in property taxes at $387 million, and this is related to the final tax bill of the year, which had a due date of October 31st. So it's the timing of that is why that number is so large. We have local improvement charges are outstanding, about $11.3 million, payments in lieu of taxes at $5.3 million, and just general revenue, we have current receivable of about $7 million. For capital projections, we had a net budget available before expenditures of $539 million. As of September 30th, we'd spent $85.5 million this year. We're projecting another $266.3 million, and so we're projecting to carry forward into next year $288 million of work uncompleted as of March 31st. We'll move on to the hospitality expenses. So for the 3-month period that ended September 30th, we'd spent about $1,100 in hospitality expenses, and the details of that you can see in attachment number 9 of the package. And finally, we'll move on to the expenses for reportable individuals. So we had travel this quarter of $11,000. Out-of-town travel, mostly made up of conferences, which was $9,000. Some development and training, which was an FCM conference of $1,200. And then we had some meals and miscellaneous expenses of $500. So grand total for the quarter was $22,000 in expenses, and year-to-date total is now $53,000. And again, we can provide additional details if required. And that's the end of the update, so happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Dave. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
So, shall I put the motion on the floor, Mr. Chair?
That would be great, thank you.
That the Audit and Finance Standing Committee forward the second quarter 22-23 financial report to Regional Council for information.
Thank you very much, and seconded by Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for this report. A couple of things that I don't see here. So back in January, there was a very well-written press release by the chair of the Big City Mayors Caucus of Canada to the feds looking for some support for operating transit. In February 17th, I believe it was, the federal government announced $750 million to fund operating shortfalls for municipalities. One of the conditions of this was that the provinces would match it, cost share it, and then hand it out mainly by ridership. I think it was 70% ridership, 30% population to the cities. That was the condition on which it was signed, and then there was some housing requirements that were tied into it for political purposes, which is all fine here. Have we received our share of that yet?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the chair. No, we haven't received our money yet with respect to that, but it is something that's certainly on our radar, and we're hoping we're going to receive some news on that soon.
Yeah. So on the radar is good, in the wallet better. Why would it take so long? This was signed onto by the provinces, and the money, if not used by the provinces, was to go back into a pot and be used by provinces who satisfied the requirements of the fund. Do we know we're getting that money? Do we know when we're getting that money? I don't hold out much hope that the province will follow the agreement that they signed, which is that they're supposed to match it. It was $11 million to Nova Scotia, which would mean $22 million if it was matched by the province, and we would get the lion's share of that, probably 18 million, 17, 18, 19 million. It's a lot of money. Do we know from officials in the province why it's taking so long I'm not holding out hope that the province will match it just because they said they would. But do we have any sense, Jerry, where that money is and when it's going to come in? It would wipe out the projected deficit for the year.
Yeah, so just a couple of things, and I certainly understand your comments, Mr. Mayor. Until we get an official letter, we can't book that revenue or that recovery, but certainly you're right, it would take down our deficit. With respect to timing of payment, I can't really speak to that. Like most things with respect to cost share recovery, restart, there's always usually some announcement that's going to be forthcoming with respect to that. So we sit and wait for that to happen.
Yeah, so I'm not in any way condemning our folks in finance or yourself. I'm sure you're doing everything you can do. It just seems strange to me that something that was announced in February, which was supposed to be signed off by a letter of agreement by the province, which I believe was at the end of March. But that money still hasn't made its way to us. So I would urge that we do everything we can. I'll certainly do everything that I can do. I had mentioned this to the Premier just at an event a number of months ago, and he said there's no way they would let money sit on the table if it could come to Nova Scotia municipalities. But right now, I assume the money's in the province and hasn't made its way to us. So I think we have to make sure that we do everything we can to get that money. That was the result of a lot of work by FCM, by the Big City Mayor's Caucus, making the case. The government was already pleading that they were not going to be, that the wallet was not going to be as open in the years to come, so that was an important piece. I'll leave that with you, Jerry. The second thing is, where are we on the deed transfer? Where's that in here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Mayor. So the deed transfer tax would be captured in our general rate surplus. This year, we have a budget of $83 million. We're actually on track to hit that budget for this year, so we're not projecting any significant surplus or deficit as a result of it within the current fiscal year.
Where are we right now, though, at the end of Q2 on revenue from deed transfer?
I believe we're at about 50% of that, so it'd be in the $40 to $50 million range.
So that's more than 50% then.
Well, we're projecting.
My gosh, you should do my taxes, and tell me I'll pay 50%. If it's at 50 million out of 82 at the end of 2 quarters, that's not bad. But anyway, that's a really important part of our budgeting. Has been for years. It's something I've been on a long time about the fact that we were getting, this was the dividend of our growth that we weren't seeing in the commercial taxes. And we all know that it's not going to last forever. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you. Well, our mayor's second question was mine, was where are we trending on the deed transfer tax? But the first comment, I guess, Jerry sitting and waiting, and, you're saying to leave it with Jerry just around the provincial monies. When we look at these reports, and sometimes you say, is there a risk? Well, is that a risk? What is the next step? Waiting doesn't seem to be very palatable. So I'm just wondering, is that another letter to the Premier to say, please advance these funding? Is the funding conditional on the province matching, Mayor Savage? So I didn't think that it was, but just in case.
Go ahead, Jacques.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councillor Gammon. So I'm advised by senior officials that the money is coming. There's no matching provincial money. There was an intention by the federal government when it announced this program, as the mayor pointed out, that there will be matching by the province. That has not occurred here in Nova Scotia. That is going to be federal money only, float through the province to the municipalities. I understand our share would be somewhere in the $8 to $8.5 million range, and we're expecting to get the check very shortly.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of questions, and thank you so much for this report. Really appreciate getting kind of a heads up of where we're at today. So I just have a few brief questions. Regarding the Hurricane Fiona expenses, it's under $1 million, but I am wondering if there is provincial funding that can offset that. Also a question about the HST offset. 400K seems like a little bit of a oops, and just wondering how did that, how was that miscalculated? The other question I have is about the councillor funds. Just a clarification, when those funds are not used, they are carried over into the future year. I know that some councillors like to hold on to those funds, waiting for community groups or provincial funding to be able to match some of those capital projects. So just clarification to ensure that that money is carried over to the future year. Another question, as far as the area rate funds go, we know that there are some, these are volunteer organizations that are doing the best that they can do to advance some of their projects in their communities. So it's kind of like we're a holding account for those area rate funds. And my question is similar to the councillor funds. I understand that if a community group is not formed, let's say that they are defunct, And that money, I understand, will stay in that holding account for future expenditures. So just wanted a clarification on that. As for the hospitality, it seems like we're a bit of a cheap date. Because we have some pretty amazing people that are coming to visit our municipality. So, yeah, I'm pleased to see that we're keeping it low and showing them a good time at the same time here in Halifax. The only other thing I wanted to mention, I have mentioned this before, moving forward with the deputy mayor expenses with regards to local travel, I think it's important to understand that that's not all council. It's not all district related. There are certainly some representation and local travel that's taking place on behalf of the mayor's office. So I do think we need to acknowledge that and find a way to properly identify those funds that are district related, or not funds, sorry, expenses that are district related expenses and that are not. Again, thank you so much for this report. I'm happy to be a member of this committee.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, Dave.
I'll try to get to all of those. In terms of your question on the Hurricane Fiona cleanup costs, there is a claims process with the province that we're currently working our way through. So there is, we expect a large portion of those funds will actually be recovered. We're still working our way through, making sure they're all eligible for the claim that they are putting forward. So it's a bit of a process. It's going to take some time, but we are expecting to get the majority of those funds to be refunded to us.
Good.
In terms of the HST offset, that budget is, it's an estimate that we do at the start of the year. It's a share of funds that come out from the province, and it's based on, it's shared between us and other municipalities. So it's a question of, what's the total funding going to be, and then what's our share going to be. So it's a significant bit of funds for us. So $400,000 is not a significant change up and down within that funding. So but that is what's driving it. It's that estimate at the start of the year based on what we actually are going to end up getting. In terms of the funds for the councillors, the district capital funds, those do carry forward year over year, but the district activity funds, actually, those do not carry forward year over year. So that $72,000 budget is to be used within that fiscal year, and then the next year there's an additional, a new $72,000 budget, but we don't carry those funds forward. So that is a bit of a difference there between those two different funds that councillors have available to them. The recreational area rates, you are correct, yes, those funds, if they are held in for that area, so if there is no group that's set up at that point in time, we hold those funds available for them. They stay there, they are not available for us to use, so it would be the requirement to have another group come forward that within that area that could actually then make use of those funds.
So they just remain in the bucket?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're segregated based on the groups within that area rate.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. Jacques, would you like to add anything? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Daigle-Gammon asked a good question about, and I don't want to just pound away on this one thing, but it's an important issue to me. So this agreement that was made in February, I just looked it up. I think I have the right one here, dated February, and it says that in order to receive funding, provincial and territory governments would need to commit to match or exceed the federal contribution, allocate the total support to their municipalities based on transit ridership, and commit to working with the federal government and municipalities toward the shared priorities of improving housing supply and affordability. It also suggests that if provinces do not take part, that money would go back into the, I don't have the exact wording on that, but it would go back into the pot. So I'm assuming that this was signed by the province, and as I see it, that agreement means matching. You'll recall the restart program in the fall of 2020, when the feds put $14 billion and then upped it to $19 billion. And part of that money was to go directly to municipalities and be matched. And the previous government did that. I think Jacques or Jerry, it amounted to $41 or $46 million.
46.
$46 million, which was extremely helpful during COVID. And this was meant as part of a sort of a continuation of that theory of funding, which is the feds recognize the need, make a deal with the province match that, and it goes to municipalities. because the province also got money for restart, for other things. So that's why I bring it up. I think it's an important issue. It's something we need to pursue both politically and at a staff level. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Jerry, would you like to, is there anything? Okay, thank you. At this point, I don't see any further speakers on the list. Are we ready for the question? The question has been called. All in favor of forwarding this to Regional Council, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you very much, Dave. The next items on the agenda are the Grants Committee. There is nothing from that. Members of Standing Committee, there is nothing from that. Motions, there is nothing from that. We do have the in-camera minutes from October 19th, 2022. Can I have a motion to approve the in-camera minutes from October 19th? Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
So go for it.
So moved, thank you.
Thank you. I would move that the in-camera, in-private minutes of October 19th, 2022 be approved as circulated.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor of those, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the Standing Committee appointments to boards and committees. This is item 15.1, and it is the new, the added item. We should have been given text around this, so I'm wondering if anybody would like to put that motion on the floor, and we can certainly send that around, or should be able to get that up on your screen. If not, can somebody please put the motion on the floor? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
You can put the motion on the floor until we actually appoint who is taking the position, right?
So the motion is written generically to appoint one councillor in various roles, and then we would make amendments as those decisions are
Okay.
made. And then that motion would be amended.
Okay, so
with the name of the
I'll
councillor.
put the motion on, and then we'll go ahead and amend it. Thank you. So I move that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, 1, appoint one counselor from Audit and Finance Standing Committee to serve on the Investment Policy Advisory Committee for a term until the end of the council term. 2, appoint one counselor from Audit and Finance Standing Committee to serve on Grants Committee as chair for a term until the end of the council term. 3, appoint one counselor from Audit and Finance Standing Committee to serve on Special Events Advisory Committee for a term until the end of the council term. And 4, appoint one counselor from Audit and Finance Standing Committee to serve on Executive Standing Committee effective December 1st, 2022 for a term until the end of the council term.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stoddard, thank you very much. We
So-
have, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I am happy to amend that by nominating Councillor Sean Cleary to the Investment Policy Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Is there any discussion on Councillor Cleary? I received an email last night. He is interested in fulfilling this role. Are there any further nominations for the Investment Policy Advisory Committee? Are there any further nominations for the Investment Policy Advisory Committee? And are there any further nominations for the Investment Policy Advisory Committee? Seeing none, that would be, we would be amending that motion to include Councillor Cleary for that. All in favor of that, please signify by saying aye, just to formalize that. All opposed? Great, thank you very much. That passes. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Mr. Chair, just on the appointment from someone Audit and Finance to serve as Grants Committee Chair, and the current chair and would like to remain, but there may be an issue because from the Northwest Community Council, I was nominated to Grants Committee, so I'm just wondering how we could resolve that, please.
Go ahead, Laura.
A little
Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome. So Laura Lewis, Council Coordinator with the Municipal Clerk's Office. The Municipal Clerk and I did discuss this last week. So if it was the wish of the Audit and Finance Standing Committee to nominate a member who would serve as chair who was already nominated by the Community Council, we would then return to that Community Council and have them select a new member.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Annie, for pointing this out to us so we could get this resolved. I appreciate it, and hope for the support of this committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Then I would like to nominate Councillor Daigle-Gammon as Chair for Life of the Grants Committee, or for at least the next term.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for seconding that. Are there any further nominations for the Grants Committee? Are there any further nominations for the Grants Committee? Third and final time, are there any further nominations for the Grants Committee? Seeing none, all in favor of Councillor Daigle-Gammon serving on the Grants Committee, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you very much. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to nominate Deputy Mayor Pam Lovelace to serve for the Special Events Advisory Committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Thank you, Councillor Stoddard, for seconding that. And we have previously received a note from the Deputy Mayor that she accepts, and she's here anyway to accept. Are there any further nominations for the Special Events Advisory Committee? Are there any further nominations for the Special Events Advisory Committee? And are there any further nominations for the Special Events Advisory Committee? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Great, thank you very much. And now we still need a member to serve on the Executive Standing Committee. Wondering if there would be any nominations for the Executive Standing Committee. Go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
I would nominate Councillor Paul Russell for the Executive Standing Committee.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Sure. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Are there any further nominations for the Executive Standing Committee? Are there any further nominations for the Executive Standing Committee? And are there any further nominations for the Executive Standing Committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, everyone. Can I have a motion to approve that? Sorry, we have the motion. All in favor of that, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Stoddard.
Do we have to vote on that, Mr. Chair?
So at this point, we have the amended motion on the floor with all of the names in place of Councillor Cleary for the Investment Policy Advisory Committee, Councillor Daigle-Gammon for the Grants Committee, Deputy Mayor for the Special Events Advisory Committee, and myself for the Executive Standing Committee. The question has been called on the amended motion. All in favor of the amended motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great. Thank you very much. That motion passes. Moving ahead, the next item on the agenda is notices of motion. And I don't see any. We have already had public participation. The date of the next meeting of the Audit and Finance Standing Committee is December 14th, 2022. And with that, we have reached the end of the agenda, so could I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you very much, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.